I discovered a long time ago that the quickest way to shut people up in an online debate, social media debate, whether it's sports or politics or anything, is to offer to debate them, to let them know, hey, I am here to debate. Let's debate. Okay, you can call me. We will set up a live stream. You can debate me live, face to face, in person of sorts, online. That shuts them down immediately. I have not had one person, most of these obviously involve college football, that I have said when there has been a back and forth on social media that has ever taken me up to debate. And then I had an exchange like that with several people on Facebook today regarding other matters. And I said, well, let's discuss it. You making your point, I make my point, and this typing exchange back and forth on social media doesn't really solve anything. Not that we're going to solve anything, but let's discuss this as adults. Silence, nothing, nobody, every time. All right. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And void of any real college football news today, I looked around a bit and it was more yap about what was said this week at SEC Media Day. So nothing really of value. I know that they've got a quarterback competition there in Missouri. Many of us had speculated or just assumed that Bo Pribula would be the starting quarterback that transferred from Penn State for Eli Drinkwitz this year. But they still have the young quarterback, Sam Horn, to contend with Bo Pribula. So that will be a quarterback battle to watch throughout August camp. Probably a good time here in the next couple of weeks for us to size up quarterback battles across the nation. Yeah, I won't even start to list them, but many quarterback battles, as is always the case across the nation leading into the college football season. So that's fun to track during August. But what is even more fun for me to keep track of are national championships. So again, void of college football news today, unless you would like to call and bring something up. So I've left the link there in the chat. If you've got anything on your mind concerning college football, please give me a call. Otherwise, we are going to continue our trip back in time in reverse. We started with 2024. If you have any interest in us breaking down the national championship races and the resumes and the rightful awarding of national championships from 2024 back through the BCS era to 1998, then check out the live streams from a couple weeks ago. So those are clearly marked, and you can join in the fun. As I've stated for months and months and months, we would get back to this at some point. We left this off maybe 3 years ago would be my guess. It seems like about 30 years ago, but I'm guessing it was about 3 years ago where we went and started through each college football season to rightly name the national champion. And unfortunately, we've already gotten to the point where we have had to name multiple national champions. This is not about me telling you who I believe is the best team. This is not me predicting games. So forget that. Get that out of your mind. Who was the best team? No. This is about who earned the national championship. And because of the messed up, screwed up system throughout college football, even that to a small degree exists today, but as we peel back the years, of course, it gets worse and worse and worse as we go back in time. There are going to be years where we've got 3 national champions, 5 national champions, 7 national champions, because nothing got decided on the field and the resumes are just too close to say, you know what, they are the national champion, because a bunch of sports writers, some competent, some incompetent, deemed that team over that team. That's not fair. It's not right. Makes no sense. It's just a stupid system. moronic beyond belief. So we are the voice of college football, best discussion, debate, and analysis. We've come up with those taglines, but maybe we need another one. Maybe I'm thinking of, as I said what I just said, the Tucker Carlson line that he used to always use. I don't know if he uses it now. Have not seen the man in a long time, but Tucker Carlson, when he used to, he had some kind of opening line that was pretty clever about flying in the face of smugness and groupthink or whatever it was. Same deal here. I don't care who in the past is deemed who to be the national champion. They really didn't know what they were doing collectively. Were there individuals who knew what they were doing? Yes. And also, to be fair, the system was just in such a mess and so dysfunctional that, hey, had I been given a vote pre-1998 to vote for a national champion, many of those years, I don't know what I would have done. I would have said, okay, either I'm going to abstain from my vote, which means I don't have any power in the process, so I don't want to do that, or they're going to take the vote away from me if I abstain. Number two, I'm going to make a judgment call on who I believe is the best team in the country, and that's not how I believe it should be done, who we think is the best team in the country. Or number three, I'm going to be dividing my vote like you see the half votes in some of these years. We're going to get to it right now in 1997. You're going to see a half vote. We're going to see it in 1996. We're going to see it other years where guys just determined, I don't know who I should vote for because I've got two teams here that equally earned it or very close to equally earned it. Therefore, I'm going to split my vote. I would have hated to have done that, but I might have split my vote some years 5 times. There's a 1/5 vote, a 1/5, a 1/5, a 1/5, a 1/5. I wonder what they would have thought of that. All right, we will check the chat, and then we will start to line up the national championship seasons and the resumes 1997 going backward. Keep in mind that the audio from these live streams, you can catch the audio on your favorite audio platform, and that goes for all the channels here at the Voice of College Football. Amazon, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of those good people carry the Voice of College Football. So regardless of the channel, you can catch the audio, and again, including right here on the main channel. Also, keep in mind that we will have an August watch party as we have for this summer, June and July. And so we will run a poll here in the next week or two and give you options on what game you want to rewatch during the month of August. What vintage game, classic, epic game from college football history you want to watch. So if you have any nominees, certainly throw them in the chat and hopefully I will remember them. Otherwise, we will take probably last month's poll, those 3 participants, and we will chuck the game that obviously won that we already watched and throw in another game. So please vote on the watch party. And then better than voting on the watch party would be participating in the watch party. We had a good time last month. We had a good time in June. We will have a good time in August, breaking down a college football masterpiece. So please become a member here at the Voice of College Football. It's like $3, whatever it is. And so you get a watch party once per month until we get to the season. And if we get a favorable response from all of you, then we're going to do a watch party every week because obviously we've got new games every week. And so we will have a new watch party the next Monday or Tuesday. In the chat, Tim says the Husker fans are going to be happy in this decade. What makes me think that the Colorado fans will be sad? Yeah, well, I got to say that for the 1990s, you could make a case for Miami. You could make a case for Florida State, but I do think that Nebraska, I'd have to go through the numbers because it's pretty close. It's a good argument between those three for the team of the decade. And Colorado fans at least got themselves a national championship, or so they think. They got a national championship, or so they think. Yes. No adults on social media. It's not allowed. So I need to get off there. Chris is sticking up for Notre Dame winning a national championship at some point. I don't know when that is, maybe 1990. I've got another year for Notre Dame to show up. Christopher says, basically, Mark went along with every BCS and CFP. Okay, with the CFP, I think it's a generally valid system, playoff selection. I don't like it. It's not my favorite. It's not the best. It's not objective. But the playoff committee never messed up to the degree that somebody was left out. Well, Florida State 2023 was left out that had a case for national championship status without playing the two games that they needed to play in the playoff. Therefore, we have a lot of conditions. Almost every season during the CFP, Chris, we've got a condition on teams that got left out, not necessarily screwed, but they got left out with comparable resumes to teams that made it. So I have questions and notations. And when we release this from top to bottom, 1869 all the way through 2025, probably at that point, there will be new national champions in many of these years, or added national champions or subtracted national champions. There will also be just notes. For example, UCF did not do enough, nor did they have the opportunity to do enough in 2017 and 18 to earn a national championship bid from the Voice of College Football. However, it should be noted they were undefeated and they did not get an opportunity to win the national championship. So no, I did not change any of the playoff conclusions, but I've got notes on 2014 to a certain extent, 2016 to a small extent, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, and 23, of course, in terms of teams that earned a playoff spot just as much as a playoff team that was in the field. So not that the committee screwed up, but they just didn't have enough spots. And so team number 5, in my estimation, had just as valid of a right to be there as team number 4. And then if you go back to the BCS era, to Chris's point, he says, I went along with every BCS champion. Not necessarily 1998 in terms of the game participants. 2000, no. 2001, no. 2003, of course, we needed USC and LSU to play. 2004, not that the wrong teams played, because I'm not playing 2020 hindsight. I had no issue with Oklahoma and USC playing in 2004. It's just that Auburn got screwed. They didn't get an opportunity. 2005, fine. 2006, okay. 2007, multiple champions. 2008, multiple champions. 09, 10, 11. There are some questions there. There are some fallacies in 2011. There are some fallacies in 2012. We have a slight issue in 2013 in regards to who Florida State played in the BCS championship game. So you're right, Chris. I completely went along with the BCS, except for 1998, 2000, 01, 03, 04, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13. So, yeah. Chris here is uncovering one of my many faults, but this has to be the worst one right here. Lying. You can't believe a thing I say. It's just constant lies. So you can do one of two things. Don't watch, or just take everything I say and just reverse it, because I'm obviously lying. Lying, lying, lying. Okay. And just many more comments. Okay. And Matthew Miller with the block. All right, let's get to it. And again, if you've got something current to talk about, 2025, you can give me a call. But otherwise, I'm going to carve through 1997, go back through to 1990. Keep in mind that we got a fresh new show starting up. Well, it's an old show that's relaunching. Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Corey Bratta and myself with the Big Ten Live Show. So talking Big Ten football with you and Corey Bratta. And so the deal there is going to be on Tuesdays. We're going to do this show at 4. We've got the Iowa show at 5. We do the Big Ten Live show at 6 until who knows. It better not grow anymore. It's long enough. All right, let's get to it. And again, the Big Ten Live show next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Be here for that. Now let's go to 1997. And while this can be debated till the end of time, there's really no debate. There's really no debate. This is rather simple. So we've got Mike letting us know that 1997 Nebraska beats 1997 Michigan soundly. Of course, you have that opinion. You have every right to have that opinion, but it's kind of meaningless. So again, our purpose and mission here is not to tell any of you who's the best team in any particular year. I don't care who the best team is. We don't know who the best team is. That should have been settled then. It wasn't. We didn't have a good enough system to figure it out. So we don't know who the best team was. Okay. So anyone, I will say this, in this type of situation here, that any Nebraska fan or anyone who says that Nebraska would have definitely beat Michigan, you are clueless. If for any Michigan fan or Michigan supporter or just anybody that says Michigan would have definitely won that game, then you are clueless. We don't know. We don't know. And again, if you know who would have won mythical games, hypothetical games, then you should be much better at actually predicting the games that are going to be played during the season, and you should be online winning a ton of money. And I'm guessing that you're not. But regardless, you don't know. I respect your opinion, Mike. I respect your opinion. We can roll out all sorts of games from the past, and I can give you my opinion on who I think would have won the game. Yeah. Now, we can roll out games from the past that nobody cares about, that weren't played in say 1997 Nebraska versus 1997. Who was the worst team in the Big Ten in 1997? Probably 1997 Indiana. Who would have won that game? Well, that is pretty clear that Nebraska would have won that game. Or Michigan 1997 against the worst team in the Big 12. Well, yeah, we can safely say that those are not comparable teams. But in a situation like this, again, who knows? I'm sure Moose has already taken up the fight that that Michigan would have won, no doubt. And again, Moose doesn't know either. None of us know. We have no idea. We can only guess. And the guess doesn't matter because the guess is never going to be played for us to find out. So actually, even though this is a difficult season to weed through, we could sit and compare these teams all day. Quarterbacks, running backs, offensive lines, defenses. We could go through the whole thing. We can go through the schedule. I've done it before countless times. The bottom line is that these were two exceptional football teams, and they both have valid arguments. Like if we had to select one team, if somebody held a gun to my head and I had to select a team, well, actually my vote would be split in this way. If you asked me who earned the national championship more so than the other, again, I just think it's so close that I'm not going to say other than Nebraska won a game on a fluke. Nebraska won a game on a fluke. So therefore, I would say they won it fair and square. It's not like they did anything illegal or that the refs blew a call. They won it fair and square. But typically, you don't draw up plays in which you're throwing passes off guys' cleats from the opposing team to ricochet into the hands of your player to win football games. So that's typically not the way it's done. So in that manner, Nebraska got luckier than Michigan. I would think that any Nebraska fan would admit to that on that one game occasion that Nebraska got luckier than Michigan. There's no debating that. It's not even debatable. Okay. So that's the argument. The argument also could go Michigan's way that they played a tougher schedule. It started out to appear to be a tougher schedule. I don't know that in the end. I'm not going to carve through it right now because there's only one conclusion to this. They both won the national championship. Now, on Nebraska's side are the obvious points that they beat a better team in their postseason appearance. Tennessee, better team, substantially better team than Washington State. And Nebraska drubbed them. Michigan skated by Washington State. Shoot, Ryan Leaf was throwing the ball in the end zone to pull off the upset at the end of the game. And Nebraska was coming off a game against Texas A&M in which they just bloodied them. They put up 54 points. They beat them by 39. They beat them by, 39 points. And Michigan certainly deserved to beat Ohio State. They outplayed them. They were the better team, but it was close. It was a close game. It's 20-14. Charles Woodson basically won that game. Without Charles Woodson, Michigan certainly would not have defeated Ohio State. I don't know who else they might have lost to. They skated by Iowa. They got by Iowa. And I'm sure there was another close one or two in there that is not coming to mind. But again, the final deal is that they both went undefeated against exceptional schedules. They played in great conferences, and there is no way to rightly distinguish between the two. So in 1997, according to the Voice of College Football, the national champions are Michigan and Nebraska. All right, so let's go back to 1996. And this may on the surface seem to be easy, but it's not. It's not easy either. Again, I am not making a judgment call on who is the best team. I'm making a judgment call on what is right, what is fair, what was earned. Okay. So if you could only select one team for 1996, I think that the voters got it right that Florida would be the national champion. Why? Because they got a rematch with the team that beat them and they whipped them. It was 52-20. I would have to go look that game up. It's obviously been 30 years since I watched the game. I believe it was a pretty close game. I believe. I should check on that. Not that it matters, but I think it was fairly close before Florida blew them out. So that would have been the 1997 Sugar Bowl. Sugar Bowl, yeah. So just curious to see when this game got out of hand. Okay, that's way too involved. Too much writing. I need a box score. Yeah, so it was kind of a slow burn in the second half. Florida State actually led this game 17-14. No, 24-17. 24-17 Florida at the break. So a one-score lead. And then they moved out from there. Okay. But they dominated the second half, clearly. I'm not trying to make any kind of case that it was a close game by any stretch. But to me, there is a difference between games that finish at 52-20 that were, let's say, 28-0 at half versus ones that were 24-17 at half. But still, not close. And that's what we had there. So this is the way I size up this season. And this is a tricky one. It's easy just to go along with the AP and say, yeah, Florida's won a national championship. I was about to say Florida State. Florida won a national championship because they avenged their loss. I don't know necessarily if that should be the criteria for winning a national championship. This one's a tough one for me to call. I may have to take this one offline and report back on this one because this may take some thought because I want to stay consistent from season to season. And this is either a call for Florida to say they avenged their loss, they win the national championship. However, what's the case for Florida State? Well, the case for Florida State is that they played 2 games against Florida and they split. And the last I checked, we did not judge and evaluate football games based on the score, meaning if 2 teams play and they split the games, we're not going to go into this whole, well, you beat them by 32, but you beat them by 4. Therefore, the 32 is better than the 4. We don't get into score comparisons. Florida and Florida State both went 11-1. Actually, I believe Florida played the extra game in the SEC championship game. So Florida went 12-1 and Florida State went 11-1. That might be my deciding factor right there. Because otherwise, then you got to throw Ohio State back into the mix and say they win a national championship too. If you're going to give or award Florida State the national championship with Florida because they split, then Ohio State played neither of those 2 teams and they went 11-1 as well. Now, Arizona State, I would knock out because they would be the one team involved that did have a head-to-head and they lost to Ohio State. So Arizona State gets eliminated based on the head-to-head against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. But the other 3, and I think this is where people's thought process gets a bit skewed by bowl games. Bowl games are not playoff games. So this is not like you could make an argument in 2024 that Oregon should be the national champion because they had the best record. No, there's a playoff system. So you earn your way to the playoff, and then everybody goes to 0-0. There's a clean slate. Everybody plays in the playoff, and then whoever wins the playoff. That was not the case back then. It was just another data point. It was just another data point. So I also don't want to be inconsistent in awarding Florida a solo national championship because they played in a conference championship game, because we did not do that elsewhere and say, you know what, you didn't play in a conference championship game. Your 11-1 is not as good as the 12-1. Although that is the case. Florida beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. That Alabama team was pretty good. I think they went 10-3, 10-2. Well, they played in the championship game. I think they went 10-3. They beat Michigan in the Outback Bowl, Citrus Bowl. If we're going to be consistent with awarding record, so if the record's the same and the level of conference and the schedule is the same, because we're going to see an example coming up with Texas A&M where don't think we can pull the trigger on them winning a national championship because the Southwest Conference was phenomenal for decades, but got so bad the final 4 or 5 years that you really played no one. Shoot, Texas Tech won the Southwest Conference the final year, I think it was, and played USC in the Cotton Bowl, got steamrolled. They were like 6-5. The Southwest Conference for the final 4 or 5 years could barely get a team ranked, let alone a team in the top 10. So we've got a Texas A&M year that they went into postseason play against Notre Dame with no losses and a tie. And you could argue that they should have been playing in the BCS champion or the national championship game. There was no BCS championship game, that they should have been paired up against number one, but they did not play anyone. We don't have that issue here. If anyone played the worst schedule, it would have been Florida State because they played in the ACC. But I got to think that Florida State in 1996 was playing a heck of a non-conference schedule. When we look back on these seasons, I wish that these sites would not put, well, it's fine that they put the ranking at time of kickoff, but I would like it if they put the final ranking there. So according to this, because, NC State could have finished number 10 in the country, they didn't. And North Carolina, number 11 at time of kickoff, could have been 4-7. So Florida State played number 11, North Carolina. They won by 13. They played number 6, Miami. They won by 18. They played number 14, Virginia. And I can guarantee you, Virginia did not finish number 14 in 1996. And they won that game by 7. Let's see, Virginia went, we'll find that in a second. Oh, Virginia went 7-5. There you go. North Carolina, who was number 11, went 10-2. Okay. Mac Brown. Florida State played number 25, Southern Miss. They won by 40. And then again, they beat number 1, Florida by 3. Then they lost to number 3, Florida by 32. And then if you're going to take that and look at that versus Florida, they beat, Old Peyton Manning in Tennessee. I remember that game, 35-29. I don't think it was that close at Neyland Stadium when Tennessee was number 2, and Tennessee finished like in the top 5 in the country. They beat number 12 LSU by 43. They beat Auburn, number 16, by 41. They beat Georgia by 40. Now, that was not a great Georgia team. That Georgia team finished 5-6. They lost that game to Florida State. They beat Alabama, who was number 11, and finished about that same spot, 45-30. And then they avenged the loss to Florida State. So, and then we throw Ohio State in here. So again, we're either going to award Florida a solo national championship for winning the SEC in a conference championship game and avenging their loss by 32 points, or we're going to consider these 3 teams equal because they all had 1 loss, and Florida State split, and Ohio State was not involved. We've got Ohio State beat a really good Notre Dame team by 13. They beat number 4 Penn State by 31. They beat number 20 Iowa by 12. Then they lost to Michigan. That obviously was what cost them the national championship. Then they beat the number 2 team in the country, Arizona State, in the Rose Bowl. And I don't know if any of those other teams, Penn State finished 11-2. They beat them by 31 points. They beat Iowa, who finished 9-3, by 12. So those were their 2 best wins, in addition to Notre Dame, who finished 9-3 and in the top 10. So they had 4 extremely strong wins along with the Rose Bowl. So I'm sure this one stirs up Yes, they beat Rice 70-7. That should be the crowning achievement right there. Yes, Texas Tech went to there was a crazy, I think this was the season when USC won the Cotton Bowl and trounced Texas Tech, that there was some kind of crazy 4 or 5-way tie at 5-3 in the Southwest Conference, and nobody was really any good, and Texas A&M was on probation. Our buddy Chris brings up a good point. BYU was 14-1. However, the issue here is, again, my criteria starts with record. Are the records the same? Basically the same. But next has to come conference and schedule. And BYU did not play in a major conference. So had BYU gone undefeated, then we would be making the argument for BYU to share a national championship. BYU lost to Washington by 12. BYU beat Texas A&M, number 13 at time of kickoff, by 4. And Wyoming in the WAC championship game in overtime, they beat Kansas State by 4. So they went the entire conference season and did not play a ranked team. How good was Washington that year? 1996, Washington was a pretty good team. 9-3. Lost to Colorado in the Holiday Bowl. Lost to Notre Dame. Lost to Arizona State. So certainly BYU lost to a competent team for sure in a pretty close game on the road. And then, Texas A&M in 1996 finished 6-6. So they were not the number 13 team in the country. Do we have a common opponent in here? Yes, Arizona State would be a common opponent between BYU and Ohio State. So BYU lost to Arizona State by 3, I believe, and Ohio State beat Arizona State by 3. And then also BYU common opponent against Florida or Florida State. No. Yeah, not much to go on there. Got to call this one an Ohio State, well, to be precisely in order, not that it matters if everyone shares a national championship, but Florida, Florida State, Ohio State, 1996. 1995. And this one is rather null and void. Just to give this one a look. We will get to the super chat here in 2 seconds. So there are the final 1995 rankings. Got Dave chiming in. Dave, good to see you here. Thank you for the contribution. You inspired me to do the same thing, Mark. The difference is my criteria is what if the NCAA made a tournament for college football to decide a champion? Okay. That's your criteria. But Dave, with all due respect, and what you're doing is fun, I'm dealing with facts. I'm dealing with results. You're dealing with hypotheticals. You're guessing, right? Which is fine. That's what you want to do. But that's what that is. You're guessing. I'm just evaluating. I'm evaluating resumes. This has nothing to do with who I think would have won any of these games. Many times I think the team that did not win a national championship would have won the game. If we go back to 1990, which we will, I'm going to tell you that I think that Miami was the best team in the country, but they should not be the national champion. I would tell you during the playoff era, because the teams have shown up and had to play each other, I can't really say that there's a season during the CFP era where I have an opinion that a team that did not win the national champion was the best team. I would tell you that 2015 Ohio State had the potential to win a national championship because they were actually even better from a talent standpoint than they were the year before when they won the national championship. I'm not saying they deserved it. I'm saying they could have won it if we're talking about who the best teams are. You know, you could make an argument that the Clemson team that beat Alabama on the last play of the game in 2016 was not the better team, but they won the game. So, of course, they won the national championship. You could say that 2017 Alabama did not earn their way into the playoff because they did not even get to the conference championship game. And I'd say since 2018, the best teams won. I'd say the best team has won the national championship since 2018 for sure. Or not for sure, because again, I'm not going to predict games that did not play, were not played, but I don't think there's really a debate. But Dave, thank you for that. You'll have to let us know what your results are if you have started this or you're halfway through or you've completed everything. So you're having an NCAA tournament every year in the history of college football. Okay. So again, we get back to 1995 and it's just flat out cut and dry. So you've got two undefeated football teams that play in the Fiesta Bowl, and Nebraska just completely smokes Florida by basically 40 points, 62-24. Done. Nebraska, all by themselves. 1994. This is much like 1997 to me, except the voters did not get it right. I'm not going to make a call on whether Nebraska was better or Penn State was better. I think most of college football nation would tell you that Nebraska was better. Let's take a informal poll here. Our informal poll will be that who would have won a game between Nebraska and Penn State in 1994? So maybe some people's opinion is a bit skewed, and understandably so, because Nebraska won. They were so dominant surrounding those seasons. The next season and 96, 97, 90, they were dominant for another 4 or 5 seasons after that. So Penn State kind of popped up. Not that they weren't good in 93, 95, 96, 97. They were good. They were top 10 good, but they did not seriously contend for a national championship except for this one season. So I think we tend to think, well, Nebraska was a powerhouse and Penn State, this was a one-off. So Nebraska was the better team and would have won the game. And maybe they would have. However, again, we're looking at two teams that did not play, that both went undefeated. Now, let's look at Nebraska and Penn State's seasons. So some of you are probably aware that Penn State was number one to a certain point in this season. Well, we can see right there when they completely trounced Ohio State. 35-0 at half, 63-14, crushed Ohio State. And that was an Ohio State team that finished in the top 10 in the country in one poll. Anyway, Penn State obliterated Ohio State, and they rose to number one in the country. But wait a minute. How does this make any sense? According to this, Penn State was number one when they played Ohio State. They beat the number 21 team in the country by 7 touchdowns, and they dropped to number 2. Now, I knew that they had dropped during this stretch right here. So this Indiana game, 35-29, this Illinois game, 35-31, both of those games on the road, as we can see, ESPN, ABC. I specifically remember both of those games to a certain extent that, yeah, Penn State, that's what cost them a split national championship, was struggling against. One of those games was truly a struggle. The other one was more of a huge lead, gave it up. Still, if you only win by one score, I don't care, unless the other team scores their last touchdown on the last play of the game, there's some uncertainty there. You're only winning by one score and there's still time on the clock. So even if you've got a huge lead and you give it up and barely win and win by one score, a lot of excuses are made that, well, they had a huge lead and then they just cruised. Well, so that's where Penn State lost a chance at the national championship. Then it did not help them that an 8-3 Oregon team showed up at the Rose Bowl and not a Pac-10 power that had a great season, but a 3-loss team. So Nebraska got to show out against a great Miami team. and Penn State did not. So Penn State's wins here. Number 14, USC, they beat them by 24. Number 5, Michigan, by a touchdown, and that Michigan team finished 8-4. Ohio State finished 9-4 that year, and Penn State won by 7 touchdowns, and then the Oregon win. So they did not have a huge win because Michigan went from number 5 to 15, 16 in the country, whatever they finished. Let's see. 12, 8-4. Ohio State, number 14. That's in the AP, 9-4. That's kind of screwed up. Ohio State beat Michigan. They should have been ranked ahead of them, and they were in the other poll. Anyway, this goes to show you another evidence of the voters not knowing what they're doing. So there's Penn State, and I understand it. I get why there was a vote in Nebraska's direction. I totally get it, but it's not fair. If I could only vote for one team in 1994, I would have voted for Nebraska too. They trucked West Virginia by 31. That team was ranked in the top 25. I don't know where they finished, but West Virginia was typically finishing in the top 25. They actually finished number like at a top 5 team the year before and lost the Sugar Bowl. Number 13, UCLA, they beat them by 4 touchdowns. They beat Kansas State by 11. They beat a number 2 Colorado team by 17. Oklahoma was pretty much garbage throughout the 90s. They beat them by 10, and then they won the matchup, the huge one against Miami in the Orange Bowl. They were trailing, and they just dominated the fourth quarter of that game. But what is right here is that we have, again, I'm not going to call it a split national championship, just 2 national champions. That West Virginia team finished 7-6. They lost to South Carolina in the CarQuest Bowl. So not a huge win for Nebraska there. All right. So that's our 1994. All right. Burks, we'll get you the link. As we make our way to 1993. And I've got issues with 1993. It's pretty simple. So, game of the century, one of about 87 of those. Florida State went to South Bend and lost to Notre Dame by a touchdown. So Notre Dame won the big matchup. Then, of course, the next week they came back at home and lost to Boston College. And people tend to assume, at least the ones that I hear from, that Boston College was garbage. They lost to Boston College. How in the world could they do that? That should cost them the national championship. Well, Boston College was 9-3. They finished at number 13 in the country. Florida State was rather, I'm not going to call them lucky, they were rather fortunate to beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. That was a heck of a game. And Florida State was a huge favorite because you got to realize at this time, Miami and Florida State would just throw Nebraska around like a rag doll and just, that's probably a bad way of putting it because Nebraska had the muscle to hang with them, but not the speed. And so between the 1987 Orange Bowl, 88 Orange Bowl, 89 Maybe not that Orange Bowl, but I know Florida State beat them by a couple scores at another time, the 92 Orange Bowl. They matched up against Miami two other times and lost 23-3, 22-0. Just couldn't score against these teams. They were too fast. And they were too limited in the passing game. So anyway, they show up in this game and they're a 2-touchdown underdog. They were a bigger underdog than that. I think it was like 17 or 18 against Florida State, and they played a great game. And Florida State took the lead late. What was the final in that game? Like 16-15, 18-16. Yeah, I think it was 16-15 Nebraska. Then Florida State kicked the field goal with about a minute left. And it was my thought, wow, Nebraska played a great game, but there's no way they can go down the field. They've got a limited passing offense. And sure enough, they came right down the field, hit on a few pass plays, and missed a field goal in which Bobby Bowden was prematurely doused with Gatorade. Then they had to come back after a penalty, try the field goal, missed it. Otherwise, Nebraska would have won the national championship in 1993. But as it stood, Florida State survived. But I have a big issue with it's head-to-head. It's simple. Now, in all these other scenarios, we did not have head-to-head, or in the case of 1996 Florida State, we had two head-to-head matchups, and of course they were split, so we've got that dilemma. Or did not have a head-to-head to break the tie, but here we do. Why is Florida State winning the national championship? I understand they got to play Nebraska, but the two teams played. I know that they played at Notre Dame, but that's the way football games are played. They're usually played at a particular site. Now, Auburn was on probation. The way I deal with that generally is that if you cheated and your cheating caused you to win games, or throughout history, what it is mostly is for you to acquire players that should have been ineligible, then that's the issue I have there. So Auburn undefeated. And of course, they didn't play two games, so they would have played probably their two toughest games, or two of their toughest games of the season, the final two games that they didn't play. So promoting an Auburn claim for a national championship is a bit much, because only 11 games instead of 13 they would have played in the SEC championship game against Florida, who finished number 5. And then they would have played, if Auburn would have been eligible, then you probably would have had Notre Dame and Auburn would have played in the Sugar Bowl. Then you would have had a real mess. So as it stands for me, Notre Dame is national champion. But if you take into account that Nebraska has the same record as Notre Dame, and Nebraska lost to a much better team, Notre Dame lost to BC. Well, we got one of those 1996 round robin deals where if we justify one team as tying for a national championship, then we've got to go the full route, because Florida State beat Nebraska. Florida State lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost to BC. We've got a three-way tie again for a national championship with Florida State, Notre Dame, and Nebraska. All right. Let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got Burks on the line. Burks, what's going on?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good.
I was like, my blood was boiling. I wanted to call in so badly.
Oh boy.
So listen, I have two takes. I just came back from a meeting. So Michigan, Nebraska, man. 1997. That's the greatest. What if I feel game. Who would win that game, because they're pretty. I feel like it would be really close. But let's be real here, Mark. I'm curious, did you choose that 1997 Nebraska would beat 1997 Michigan? I'm just curious, based on your, information and, stats and all of that.
Oh, so you didn't hear me go over 1997.
Well, sorry, I was in a meeting, but
Oh, okay. No,
yeah,
that's
my bad.
fine. You
Yeah,
don't need
yeah,
to apologize. I'm just clarifying that
mhm,
you didn't hear that.
yeah.
Okay. So, Burks, my mission here is not to tell everyone who I think would have won a game. I think
Hmm.
that's pointless. I'm not awarding national championships based on who I think would have won a game. That's as illegitimate as can be. I would hope nobody would be watching me if I was saying, you know what, I'm going to go through history and I'm going to tell you who would have won these games. No, I'm not doing that. I don't know who would have won the game. Nobody does. Nobody has a clue. These teams were so evenly matched. Nobody has a clue
Hmm.
who would have won a matchup. That's not what I'm here to do. What I'm here to do is to right wrongs in terms of teams that got screwed
Yeah.
out of national championships or teams that got elevated that did not earn the national championship. So in this particular year, now I talked through the argument for each side. So for me, this is the argument. The Nebraska argument, like if somebody held a gun to my head and I had to choose a team, again, I would not be able to say, oh, well, I watched both these teams play a bunch of games that year, as I did, and definitely Michigan would have won or Nebraska would have won. No, but in terms of who earned it more, well, Nebraska had a fluke victory. So that I think is the most egregious mark against one of these teams is that Nebraska basically they lucked into a win. Now, it wasn't their fault. They didn't cheat. The refs didn't miss a call. I don't know if you're aware of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I don't. I was born in
Oh,
1999.
okay.
I'm
So,
25,
so this is
so
what happened. This is what
yeah,
happened. You
yeah,
should, actually, I'm going to give you a shameless plug. You should read my book.
yeah.
So Nebraska was playing at Missouri. Missouri was a decent team, not a great team, 7-5 kind of team. And game was going back and forth, back and forth. The game went to overtime, or this was in regulation, and Nebraska had a fourth down and they were losing by a touchdown. If they throw an incomplete pass, the game's over. And they're sitting at about the Missouri 15-yard line, and they throw a pass into the end zone. Scott Frost does, and the ball ricochets off a Missouri defensive back who had got knocked down or slipped or was diving for the ball or something. The ball hit his cleat and popped up into the air, and a Nebraska wide receiver caught it to tie the game and send it into overtime. Well, that's not really how we design football plays, is to throw it off a guy's cleat to another dude. So they got lucky. Now, did they cheat or do anything wrong? No, they won the game fair and square, but they got lucky. Um, the other point on Michigan's side would be that if you really look at the schedules are pretty comparable, but I would say that Michigan played a tougher schedule slightly, not by a lot. So on the Nebraska side, Burks, I would say that they were a much more dominant team near the end of the year. Michigan slipped by Ohio State. That was a close game. They escaped. I'm not saying they weren't the better team. They were certainly the better team, and they deserved to win the game. But man, Charles Woodson won that game. Charles Woodson had an interception in the end zone. He had a punt return for a touchdown. He had another pass play in which he was playing wide receiver for like 40 yards to set up a touchdown. He played a great game, and he won the Heisman Trophy on that day against Ohio State. And then, of course, Michigan won the Rose Bowl game against Washington State by 5, and Washington State was throwing the ball into the end zone to win the game. So that was a close Rose Bowl. In comparison, Nebraska won the Big 12 championship game by 39 points. They scored 54. They wiped Texas A&M off the field. And then they probably played what was either Florida State or Tennessee was the other best team in the country after those two. And they took out Tennessee pretty easily. 42-17, I believe, was the final score. So Nebraska was playing better football at the end of the year.
Dude, yeah, I 100% agree with what you just said. And not only that, if Woodson wouldn't play, I truly feel like, let's say like they were to verse Michigan, Nebraska, and Woodson wasn't playing, I just don't see how Michigan could, like beat Nebraska by so much, because Woodson was truly a one man army kind of player,
Yeah.
like he was amazing. And if he didn't, and you're right, Nebraska was just at the end, they just like were dominating. They finished so strong. And so when I search up this, this Nebraska and Michigan, it seems like the internet is favoring Nebraska much more than Michigan, just because of how they finished at the end. And when you look at the numbers, of Nebraska was number one in offense, Michigan was number one in defense, Nebraska was actually number six, I think, or five in defense, and Michigan was 40th in offense. So Nebraska actually has the edge in terms of statistics and how they finish at the end. But at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, look at Michigan,
Sure.
Ohio State. Look at Michigan, Ohio State last year. Ohio State edged Michigan in everything, so like on almost everything, I would say, right? And Michigan did the upset. So I understand. I agree with you. This is actually smart that you don't really try to choose like who you think is going to win if these two teams haven't played yet. Who's going to
Yeah.
win? Yeah.
I've been accused
Hmm.
from time to time of being arrogant, but I'm not an
Hmm.
arrogant twit to the point that I'm going to tell people. Now, I can give my opinion. I respect everyone who gives their opinion and says, "Hey, I think Nebraska would have won," or "I think Michigan would have won," or whatever game we're talking about. I totally respect that, and everybody has the right to do that. But I'm not. I'm doing something that's systematic. I want to be able to release something that says, the voice of college football, meaning myself, but our entire community, we have vetted out every season in the history of college football and we've righted some wrongs. And it's not based on just, oh, I think they would have won. I like them. I like their colored jerseys, that kind of thing. No, it was based on logic and reason and weighing the resumes. And if there's a tie, it's too bad. I don't want there to be ties for national championships. I would love for us to be able to go through every season and say, well, that's definitely the team that earned it. But once we get previous to the BCS era, and even a couple of years in the BCS, it is a muddled mess. There's going to be seasons where I'm going to say, you know what, there's 5 national champions. Like according to our system, there's 5-11-1 teams and they didn't play each other. And there's a couple seasons coming in the 70s where it's like that.
Yeah, and I have one more something to say. This is actually doesn't have to do with Michigan. Well, it has to do with Michigan, but it kind of has to do with Connor Stallions. If you want to hear my take on this,
Sure.
but so lately, I don't know if you noticed, Mark, but I am probably the most hated Michigan YouTuber, or person on YouTube in terms of my community, not other community people like me, but Michigan doesn't, because I am super against Connor Stallions. And just like based on like, I want my fan base to be perfect. I don't like it how channels support them. And so, and you need to understand, Mark, social media, they really, OSU and MSU fans and all of these fans, they go at Michigan when a person is supporting Connor Sens like terribly. So I just want to tell you that you had a show, Voice of College Football Michigan, on Tuesday, and listen, they're doing a great job, right? You TJ and these guys doing amazing job. They found a community's growing stronger, all this stuff. But I'm trying to look out for you, Mark, and I just want to say your Voice of College Football, the brand of Michigan, the clip they made on Tuesday of supporting Connor Stallings, how he did nothing wrong. I just want to say, like, doing that is gonna, like, people are gonna make fun out of a brand. Like, you don't understand, Mark, how awful social media is. And like, they'll take clips of that of them supporting, because 13 minutes I saw, like, I'm a huge Connor Stallions hater. Like, you don't understand like the reputation, the stuff that Michigan is going through with the scandal, and people calling us cheaters. Like, I ran the Big Ten 10K, two people called me cheaters when I was wearing Michigan gear. Like, our reputation has really gotten destroyed. And for your post to support Connor Stallions and like it, it's just only going to make a mockery of our fan base and your channel. And I really like your channel, and I don't want people to mock it, right? So I'm just like, I can't really change your brain. You do what you do to run a business, but I'm just like, what is your reaction on that? Because people will, I don't want your brand to be a mockery, because you have hosts supporting Connor Stallions and saying like he did nothing wrong. And when it's obvious he did something wrong, you can't do what was it, scouting during the in season. You can't do it like operation. You can't have like an operation and scout other teams doing regular season. You can do it in the postseason when he broke a lot of rules and they're saying he did nothing wrong. So I don't know what your view on this is.
Well, I've addressed this issue for, of course, the last year and a half in
Yeah,
terms of where I stand on it. And I don't think there's any question that Connor Stallions cheated. That can't be argued in any
yeah,
way.
I agree.
Now, people argue whether it meant anything or if it did any damage or it gained an
Mhm.
advantage, whatever. It doesn't,
Yeah,
nobody cheats for any other reason than to change the outcome of a game. Otherwise, there's no reason to cheat. If you're 100% sure that you're going to win, if you are confident you're going to win, and you don't, if for all the Michigan fans and other people that say, well, that didn't help us, well, then you don't do it. And to the next point, if you've got some rogue assistant running around doing things that you're unaware of, or then you find out that's what's going on, and you're a college football coach who makes millions of dollars and who runs a program that is in the public scrutiny like Jim Harbaugh did, then you should know what's going on, number one. Number two, when you do find out what's going on, then you need to take those matters seriously. And I can't imagine, nobody can explain this to me, why Connor Stallions was allowed to continue to do this for 2.5 years if it wasn't effective. If Jim Harbaugh found out about it, or even the defensive coordinator found out about it, and it was deemed as ineffective, they would have said, stop screwing around. This isn't helping us. We don't need you to do this. Forget it. It obviously, he was cheating and other people knew about it and it helped them. There's no question about that. I don't know how that in any way can be debated, because otherwise they would have stopped doing it if it didn't help.
yeah, and that points me to my next question. I just did not. I was extremely disappointed that for the last 13 minutes of their video last week, they were just supporting him like he did nothing wrong, like and then it's just gonna make a mockery of our fan base when people are gonna cut and clip that video, put it on Twitter, and then it's gonna say Voice of College Football Michigan. And like, do you kind of feel like this is something that they should have not done, or you don't really care about this much?
Well, that's a difficult question, because I hire people to do a job and to give their opinion, and to, as long as they are not berating people, as long as they are not in any way offending people based on reasonable guidelines, of race and gender and those things, politics and religion, as long as none of those things are being violated, I have given these hosts the latitude to voice their opinion. Now, that doesn't mean that in the case of what you're telling me or another situation that I would not intervene. Uh, there has been a few times that I've kicked people off of here because of various things that they've done. So, yeah, there's that tension between me giving freedom to express opinion and yeah, not wanting it to be taken to the degree that it does become a mockery.
Okay, because like I said, they're doing good job and stuff, but this Connor Stallion stuff, having a video of him and supporting him and putting thumbnails on him and all this stuff, it's not acceptable because all these other channels are just gonna they're just gonna talk trash. Like I go to all these Ohio State and like Notre Dame channels, and they don't have amazing stuff to say because they support Connor and they say that they didn't cheat. That's the issue. That's what I'm saying. We cheated 100%, not even a question. Now the final verdict is okay. How much of an advantage did that give us? It is. Did they know every single take, like play, all the plays, everything? If that is true, that they knew every single stuff and they knew every counter, then yes, they should get a really severe punishment. Right now, we don't have evidence that how much of an advantage it gave them to do it. And then plus, the coaches and stuff. There's still evidence of did they know or not. I personally think they knew, but like I said, I'm just like I said, I really love my fan base, Mark, and I do love your channel, your community. And I'm gonna not lie, I've backstabbed some of these Michigan channels because they're talking about Connor Stones and supporting him, and because I want my fan base to be perfect. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, if you aren't gonna tell them to change that, then I don't know what to say because like I don't want your brand to be a mockery. You know what I'm saying? Because you are doing good stuff. You know.
Well, Burks, I appreciate your concern. I
Yeah.
truly do. Thank you so much for that. I'll address that in a second. Let's see. Moose is saying here, no Michigan fan is denying he did not do anything he was not supposed to do, which is a nice way of saying he broke the rules.
Mhm.
But we're saying it's not as bad as rival fans are making it out to be. For the most part, Connor was just better at his job. Okay, well, that's a very flawed statement in a number of ways. First of all, Moose, you can't speak for every Michigan fan because there are tons of Michigan fans who are denying that he did anything wrong. So that's the first sentence that you made there, that no Michigan fan is denying that he did anything wrong. Yes, there are Michigan fans that deny that he did anything wrong. So that's number one. Number two, who's to say how much of an impact this has? And you know what? I've said this a million times, but I'll say it again. I don't care how much impact it had. It makes no difference to me. If you cheat, you cheated. You obviously only cheat because you fear losing and you don't believe that you can win the game. Um, the next point would be, for the most part, Connor was just better at doing his job. No, he was lousy at doing his job. He cheated. He was not. Now, if he would have been able to pull off espionage within the rules, then he would have been better at his job. But no, he cheated, so he was not better at his job. He was the worst at his job, and therefore he got fired and lost his job and lost any credibility he would have had. Um, yeah, just to look at the guy's LinkedIn page, once this story broke and we all knew about it, and information started to circulate, and his LinkedIn page in particular got out there, I thought, now if this is the same LinkedIn page that he had when he got hired, then the entire Michigan staff are a bunch of morons. They are complete idiots. Because if they hired this guy and this is how he was promoting himself, then yes, Jim Harbaugh's a moron, and the entire Michigan staff is loaded with a bunch of idiots, and the administration as well. Why you would hire a guy who's promoting himself in such a way? And so Burks, you got to the crux of the matter. For me, at this point, based on everything we know, the crux of the matter for me is we know that Michigan cheated, but I want to know, is it going to be determined when we finally get the results? Did Michigan, did Harbaugh, and I think we had two defensive coordinators at two different times between McDonald and Clinkscale. Did they know? We know that Sharon Moore knew at some point. I don't remember the dates on that, but trading text messages. So I want to know if it can be verified that the entire coaching staff knew, or at least to the defensive coordinator role, then they need to get trounced. The NCAA should just blast them.
Yeah, and Mark, TJ is a really smart guy in terms of, knowing his recruiting knowledge, but what he did on the last 10, 13 minutes saying that, you know, how did Connor Stallions know that, he didn't even know he was doing nothing wrong and stuff. He didn't even know about this stuff. Like, he was not like, it really, really, like, they still don't get it. And naming a membership Connor Stallions Espionage team, it is total clownish if you ask me. And, I'm just, and that's why I go on other channels to talk about, like, our fan base needs to take credibility. We're not perfect. We're not like, oh, everything is right. Michigan fans, it's like nothing is wrong for them. We do everything right, everything, we're all goody two shoe. No, it's not. All right. And this is what pisses me off. And the fan base, and that's why these Michigan Avenger channels that I backstabbed they're all supporting the same stuff about Connor Stallions. And it's just gonna make us a mockery. We're just at this point, the fact that I went to a Big Ten 10K ran and people are calling me cheaters as a joke. I smiled, but I just didn't like it,
Yeah,
like,
sure.
yeah, it's just I don't know, dude. And these guys don't understand it, and I don't know what to say. And what I did, calling them out and giving them hell, Now I'm not gonna troll these guys because Mark, I don't troll and I don't talk crap about, like, I don't like go on a channel and try to mess their show up because I'm not like that. And I like you a lot, and I don't want to mess just your business and stuff. So I'm not like that. So but I'm just really disappointed at how my fan base is still supporting, and even the co-hosts of many shows are supporting this guy. You know.
Yeah. So the disappointing portion of all this about human nature is
Yeah.
that you obviously, Burks, you can separate your fandom from facts and reality and objective analysis. You have the capability of doing that. Not many people have that ability. Um, so, for example, Urban Meyer has this issue with Zach Smith that
Yeah.
gets blown out. Whatever happened, I'm not going to dig it back up because I can't remember exactly, the step for step how it laid out, but certainly I covered it. I didn't shy away from it. And I'm not here to defend Urban Meyer, defend Zach Smith. I'm not here to, unless, I find out information in which that puts me in a position to do so. But at that point, this does not reflect upon me. I don't know why fans get so offended when coaches, players that they support, teams and organizations they support do things wrong, and they think that they have to take it upon themselves to defend them. No, they did something wrong. If Ohio State does something wrong, if they cheat, you know what I want? I want to have Ohio State investigated and to have them held accountable, just like any other school in the country. It makes no difference to me. I want fair competition on the field, and regardless of the results, I want the truth to be known in any of these situations regarding any teams. So, when Urban Meyer's gone off and done stupid things off the field, people call in and they think like they're attacking me, and I just throw up my hands like I don't have responsibility over the guy. Like, I think he's a great football coach. I supported him as the Ohio State football coach, but this has nothing to do with me. I'm going to tell it like it is. He made some stupid moves. He did wrong things. I'm not going to try to defend him just because he coached at Ohio State. Why am I going to defend somebody just because they wore certain laundry and coached for a certain football team or played for a certain football team? Wrong is wrong, So yeah, people become too affiliated with their team and they wear it as a badge of honor, which is which is fine to a degree, but when it starts to cross a line of common sense and morality and ethics, then that's a problem.
Yeah, Mark, I don't even have a Twitter. I used to have one like years back, like 2023. I didn't have it because of getting toxic. People are already making burner accounts of me. Like and saying terrible stuff. If I said this, not even my account. I want to like knock out whoever the hell made that account. But people are making burner accounts because of my views of and me, going to other channels and talking stuff that I don't like what these other channels are doing because I love the University of Michigan and I want us to be the best fan base, the best university, the best athletic program. But unfortunately, we're light years away from that, man, because it's like we have no morals lately. And this Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh is the biggest hypocrite, Mark. You know, he just leaves Michigan with so many problems. We didn't have good recruiting class. He basically axed our program, took everyone away. Then he said, "Oh, I'm not apologizing." At least when you're the CEO of a damn program, man, a CEO of a company, you have to take responsibility. He's too arrogant to not take any responsibility. And then when the Judge and Courtman stuff happened, he didn't show up, and Michigan's probably gonna get a penalty for that. So this is the stuff that really is pissing me off and frustrated, and I'm really pissed off with my YouTube fan base. And if they all hate me, who cares? I'll just move on. But that's really what I just wanted to say, honestly.
Well, Burks, I appreciate you calling. And
Yeah. And I
I
appreciate you for actually, accepting my call and
of course.
and not only that too, but just remember, I don't have a Twitter. People are making burner. One person made a burner account, me saying some awful stuff was not even me. So just so you know, I don't have a Twitter. If you see Burks the Wolverine, that is not me. I have Discord. That's it, and YouTube. So just letting you know, man.
I gotcha.
All
Well,
right,
Burks,
cool.
I hope you can disengage from this and
Yeah,
so your blood's not boiling and you can
yeah.
just enjoy the rest of the day.
And last quick question. I've been using your Amazon link. How does that help you? Because I'm just curious because I've been using it a lot. Your Amazon
So,
link.
depending on what you buy, I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked
Yeah.
because, hey, this is to me the most important question of the show would be
Yeah.
that. So, let's say you spend $100 on Amazon.
Yeah.
Obviously, it doesn't cost you anything. It's the same $100 you would have sent all of it to Amazon. I get 3%, 5%, whatever percent. It depends on the product, but something in that 3 to 5% range.
Okay. That's perfect because I'm thinking of buying a Michigan helmet, like a legit painted one. It's $338. So I think you'll get some good credit on
I
that. So
appreciate that.
yeah, of course.
I would love to make money off of Michigan gear sales. Yes.
All right. Take care, my man. All right.
Thank thank you,
Yeah.
Burks.
Yeah, of course.
Take
Appreciate it.
care.
Yeah. Take care.
Well, that was a heck of a call. That sounds like I need to like clip that off and post it. Be like Michigan caller goes off on Connor Stallions. Can't defend that knucklehead. All right. Got Minnesota Dave stopping by as well. What's going on, sir?
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
Hey, Dave.
Yeah, like I said, I've been doing this myself. I started around the 40s and kind of
Okay.
looked at what would be the criteria if the NCAA tournament was a thing for college football.
You're going to play 64 teams?
No.
Oh,
This would have been a bracket of 8 because
okay.
back then I think even the college basketball one had just a bracket of 8. I started about 1940 because 1939 was the first year for the college basketball year,
Sure.
and I could have done around 39 but I started around 1940, just missing a year. My rule and criteria was the conference champions had to have at least 5 conference wins to get in. So there's a lot of conferences that got nailed out in my 1941. That was the Boulder Conference and like the Big Sky. A lot of these newer up and coming little conferences that were just starting right around that time. I didn't count them yet. I think I will extend my playoffs probably by 1960 and then extend it again by 1970. And that's pretty much it. But I ended up, while you were talking, I ended up doing the 1 year of the 90s and who I think would be, just for an example, who I think would be in the tournament if the NCAA came about. And I did 1994. I'll go from bottom to top. Your last place team to make the NCAA tournament, and I'm accepting all conference champions back then. So that would be UNLV, then Central Michigan because they won the MAC, and UNLV won the Big West. Then I put down Texas Tech being 14th. They were in the Southwest Conference because of Texas A&M's probation. That I want to apologize actually again. It was not 95, it was 94 that Texas A&M was on probation. So Texas Tech would be in the tournament. Then Colorado State would be number 13. And then no, I'm sorry, I take that back. That is Arizona would be the bubble team because Auburn didn't make it. There was no independent that was good enough because my ruling was that the NCAA was going to pick an independent. It would be the highest ranked independent if there was only one independent back then. To make the tournament, not the whole season. And then Utah, and then Oregon, and then Ohio State, Kansas State, Florida State, Bama, Florida, Colorado, Miami, and Penn State and Nebraska will finish it out for 94. That's the one I just did on a sheet of paper.
I thought only 8 teams made the tournament.
Oh, this would be an expansion of 16 teams because by the time we get past 70s, I do an expansion of 16.
Why?
More at the time, you had way too many conferences to deny back then. By NCAA standards, I think they would have gone and picked every conference champion, even no matter how good or how bad the conference was. And that's the only reason why I did 16, which would leave not that many at-large bids. And I also would probably put a rule that only the highest ranked independent would go in, and then there'll be like an at-large bid for everything else. So you'll have years, I would guess, that you have a bunch of independents, and that would be highly ranked. So you might have a lot of at-large bids in the future with me, with probably filling all of the at-large bids, like Penn State, Miami.
So you're simply selecting the field and then you're done with it? Or
Yeah,
you?
right now just simply selecting the field, or what the field would be. Yeah, I haven't gotten to the point where who I would pick for the national champions yet.
Okay. Good stuff, Dave. Well, report back.
All right.
Let us know what's going on.
Okay. Talk to you later, Mark.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye-bye.
Our guy, Minnesota Dave, I should have told him that we released our Minnesota preview today. So that's out there. I think Dave might have seen it. All right. We're going to finish this thing out. So we're on 1993. And so I have given my final judgment on 93. 1992 is a nice, easy one. So in 1992, Alabama and Miami were undefeated and played in the Sugar Bowl, and Alabama wiped them out by 21 points. So there you go. They are the only undefeated team in college football. 1992 is nice and simple. And really, 1991 is going to be nice and simple as well, in that it's another 1994-97 situation. Miami and Washington. So at this point, we had the Bowl Coalition inserted, but since Washington was part of the Pac-10, the Big Ten and the Pac-10 did not want to go along with everyone else and wanted to stick to the Rose Bowl. So Miami went to the Orange and won easily over Nebraska, and Washington won easily over Michigan at the Rose Bowl, and those teams were dominant. And again, I'm not going to differentiate between two undefeated teams that played in major conferences and played exceptional schedules, and that's what we had there. Miami and Washington, two great football teams, and nobody else comes close. Not an issue there. So 91, 92 are extremely simple. All right, this is a pain. 1990. Oh boy. Okay. Georgia Tech's the only undefeated team in the country. So in a sense, you would say, well, they won the national championship. But that tie certainly doesn't look good. And certainly when you look at Georgia Tech's schedule against Colorado's, it does not compare. Okay, many of you know where I'm headed here in a second, and that's the fifth down. So, I'd like to go to my listings of what I've got on this one because, let's see, again, I did do this 3 or 4 years ago, and I just need to record everything. But we do have, where did I land on 1990 before we start to dissect this thing? Okay. Do not have it recorded where I thought I did. Okay. Here we go. So, it's crazy to think that Colorado, quote unquote, won a national championship in 1990. They lost a game. They tied a game. They won a game in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame, in which I certainly believe, and others do as well, that was just a bad call by an official that negated Rocket Ismail's touchdown return with about 50 seconds left in the game. And with Colorado's anemic passing attack and triple option offense, the odds of them, who knows? We'll just say who knows, because we can't say. I want to stay consistent. We can't say. But man, lost a game, tied a game, got the benefit of a very questionable clipping call in the Orange Bowl that negated the game-winning touchdown for Notre Dame. And then on top of that, we've got something called the fifth down. And if you're not aware of it, I'm not going to explain it here. But Colorado basically scored on a fifth down, which would be a rather easy judgment to make if they just flat out didn't make it on fourth down and got a fifth down and scored and won the game at Missouri. But that's not what happened, because the officials screwed up, not the officials per se, but the guys keeping the yardsticks screwed up and forgot to flip them on second down. Then Colorado thought they had one more down than they actually did, and they spiked the ball to stop the clock. Well, of course, they would not have spiked the ball on third down, what they thought was third down. It was fourth down. They would not have spiked the ball, of course. So we will never know for sure who would have won that game, but Colorado won because they got an extra down. But maybe they would have been able to win anyway. So we can't definitively say, well, the refs screwed up and Colorado would have lost. No, we don't know. But they scored on the fifth down. So this is a nightmare to try to weed through this because of all those mishaps that went in Colorado's direction this particular season. It's just not. And then Georgia Tech's schedule is not anything to write home about. And everybody else lost at least 2 games. Miami that year, Florida State that year, Washington that year in 1990, those were exceptional football teams. Those were the best teams in the country, in my opinion. But they lost too many games. They lost at least 2 games. If they would have lost 1 game, then we get them into the mix there. But man, you consider that's what Colorado had to do to win the national championship, or what was done for them to win a national championship. Well, that knocks them back to 2 losses. And then you usher in Miami, Florida State, Washington. You got a bunch of 2-loss teams that you can start to consider. Except then do you say Georgia Tech just wins the national championship with no losses? But man, it's hard to award a national championship to a team that did this. Let me see and make sure that you can still see my screen. I don't believe you can. Georgia Tech in 1990. Okay, they beat number 25 South Carolina by 3 touchdowns. They beat number 15 Clemson by 2 points. Clemson finished 10-2. That, I believe, is going to be their best win. Virginia, number 11 at the time. That was a huge game. Or I'm sorry, Virginia was number 1 in the country. Yeah, there was a huge game. It was on CBS. Jim Nantz doing the game. Big game. But Virginia finished 8-4. So they were not an extremely good team. They were a good team, but not a team to justify a national championship bid. And then Nebraska, Georgia Tech, consider how screwed up college football was, that Georgia Tech wins a national championship and they beat a Nebraska team that was probably the worst Nebraska team between like about 1970 and the early 2000s. This was like one of their worst teams. As you can see right there, number 19 in the country. What do you do with this? What do you do with this? It's a mess. It is a mess. But Georgia Tech won the games. They tied this game against North Carolina, and North Carolina finished 6-4-1. And if you were around at the time, you probably, I would think, agree with me that the best teams in the country had lost 2 games. The best teams in the country had lost 2 games. Well, we will continue on and get together here in the next couple weeks and run through the 1980s. And again, we're going to release the full results each year, plus notes. We'll size it all up for you. All right. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Make it on back. Let's see. We got a weekend here. So you may or may not see me this weekend. You will definitely see me on Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's Big Ten Media Days next week. And we got our Big Ten live show that starts with Corey Bratta on Tuesday at 6 Eastern. So we'll see you then.